The next module in this digital literacy course is data handling. Okay, so data handling is essentially the ability to deal with digital data, which could be coming from various sources. Especially these days, educators have to deal with lots of digital data. Right, so data that is coming from the student exams, their student grades, the various assessments and examination results. Right, so oftentimes we are asked to give various reports to the heads of the department or to the management about the performance of various students. And these days, this is becoming even more relevant if you are following, say, NBA's accreditation, outcome-based education, or NAC accreditation. There is enormous amount of data crunching that happens that we all have to be very comfortable with, right? So that is why this is an important element of digital literacy for all higher education educators in particular, right? So what software do we use for this number crunching? And I'm sure all of you are familiar with tools like Microsoft Excel. Right, so the generic name for such tools is called a Spreadsheet Software. Okay, and so what features does the Spreadsheet Software offer? So the Spreadsheet software allows you to organize the data in a very structured way, right? So you can imagine, what extra features does say a Spreadsheet software gives that a word processor does not give. Because in both cases, the data is in digital form. So what we are trying to say here is that you are better off storing your data, say, in a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet rather than in a Microsoft Word document. Because I have seen many people deal with data that is stored in, say, Microsoft Word or any other word processor. Actually, that is not a very productive and effective use of the tool. So whenever you are having to deal with lots and lots of data, always prefer to use any spreadsheet program. Why so? Because in addition to the representation itself, say in the tabular form and things like that, the spreadsheet software allows you to do lots of calculations, right? So it's got an enormous array of functions, built-in functions, almost like a programming language, which allows even non-programmers to do very, very sophisticated calculations. So that is why, that's one reason why you should prefer to store and manage your data in a spreadsheet software. The second most important use as well is the ability to slice and dice the data. These days, when we are dealing with lots and lots of data, I am talking about, say, about 100 records, 1,000 records, right? It can be extremely large. So it is really not very useful to be able to look at 1,000 records of the data just by pressing page down and just visually seeing it. Most of the times we are interested in summaries, right? So these summaries can be enabled using lots of mechanisms, and which is essentially what is referred to as the slicing and dicing of operations. Okay, and finally there is another very useful feature, which is the ability of spreadsheet programs to create charts and graphs just from the data, right? Which again, software like Microsoft Word cannot do, right? So that is why, in that sense, this data handling, as part of this data handling module, so much of what I will be talking about will be in hands-on nature. So actually, I would even recommend that you might try to follow along with me some of the illustrations that I am doing using the actual software in hands-on mode. Now, which software can you use? The example software products for spreadsheets, there are plenty. But the most popular of that would be Microsoft Excel, isn't it? Because it comes kind of built in with a separate license, and These are all very flexible licensing facilities are there with respect to the Office suite. So Microsoft Excel is offered as a separate product, not as part of the Microsoft Windows. Microsoft Windows is the operating systems, and within the operating systems, you have to purchase a license of Microsoft Office. And within Microsoft Office, you have many other software, and Excel is one part of the Microsoft Office suite. Okay. Now, I would also like to point out that Microsoft Excel now comes in two variations. Okay. So now one is called as the local version, wherein you can install the software, through a setup file on your local computer or laptop, right? And then you can use it. There is another version which is called as the cloud version. The cloud version is offered as part of the Microsoft Office 365. Right? Office 365 is another suite of software where they have tried to provide a majority of these installable software which is part of the Microsoft Office in the form of accessing over the cloud. Okay, so what does it mean to be able to access over the cloud? What it means is that you can access these programs without having to install it locally. Okay, so that is an extremely powerful and useful feature, right? Most of the software today are operating at that level, right? So operating by accessing the software on the cloud itself, right? So Office 365 is essentially the cloud version of the Microsoft Office suite and more actually. Okay, so you can choose to use both these versions. Of course, the one critical difference between the two is that if you want to use the cloud version, you will need access to the internet. Without internet, you cannot use the cloud version of Excel or anything that is there in Microsoft Office 365. On the other hand, right, so if you want to say work locally without any connectivity to the internet, then obviously you will have to get yourself a local version which is installed on your device, your own device. So that is the second option that you can choose. Another open source software which comes bundled with most of the Linux distributions like Ubuntu is called as the LibreOffice suite, right? As part of the LibreOffice suite, they have the name of the spreadsheet program is called as Calc, right? So once again, this Calc is available only, in fact, the entire LibreOffice suite is available as a local version only. There is one more option that is available for you to access spreadsheet program, which is through what is known as Google Sheets. Just like Microsoft, Google also offers their entire suite of Office productivity software on the cloud. Okay. Now, Google Sheets is the name of the specific product that provides spreadsheet functionality, and Google Sheets can be accessed only on the cloud, which means that internet is required. Okay. Now, before I move on, so I do want to point out that the advantage, if you have the access to internet, the biggest advantage that you will have with using the cloud version is that the files that you create are also stored on the cloud, which means that you can access those files from any place, anywhere, right? So, for example, that is precisely how I have set up my data, right? So, all my data is present in the cloud. I use the cloud version of the software. So, whether I am at home, whether I am in a meeting, whether I am in an office, wherever I am able to access it without having to lug around my heavy laptop. So, that is indeed, to me, is a extremely valuable, benefit of using the cloud version. And these days, availability of internet is not a big issue in any education institution or any workplace, and even at home for that matter, right? So I would recommend that you get used to using the cloud version as much as possible. Now, how is it that we are going to go about this particular module on data handling? Okay, so what I'm going to do is, much of it, probably this is the only last slide that you will see. Much of the rest of the my presentation is going to be in the form of demonstrations, right? I'll be giving you demonstrations on all the 4 main features that I have listed here, which is the organizing the data in a structured way. How to organize the data, I will show you. I'll be using Microsoft Excel local version for this particular demonstrations. So while, although you may not be, following everything that I'm doing, but it will be good to have Excel program in front of you in your own device while going through this particular video, so that immediately you can try out some of the things that I am demonstrating. And then, so the second thing that I will show is how to use Excel formulae for performing calculations, right? There are some extremely powerful formulae, and then I'll kind of, this will definitely not be a full-fledged tutorial on Excel, but purely at a high level, what are the things that you should look forward to learning and using is what I will focus on. The third thing that I will talk about is the ability to slice and dice the data. I already talked about it. And then finally, I'll show you how to draw some sample charts and graphs. Okay. All right. Let us now move on to understanding what is structured data organization in a spreadsheet. And as I said, we will be using Microsoft Excel. I'm going to be using a locally installed version of the Microsoft Excel, but you could try it using any of the other programs that I'm talking about, because everything that I'm going to be talking about is equally applicable irrespective of the spreadsheet program that you are using. Okay, so let me explain to you what do we mean by structured version of organizing the data. Now, firstly, in order to understand what is structured organization of the data, you have to understand what is the data model of a spreadsheet, right? A spreadsheet is organized into multiple cells, right? So I'm moving my cursor across multiple cells, right? So within these cells, so each cell has got, you can have multiple cells which are combined together to form a row, right? So the rows are numbered as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And in the latest versions of Microsoft Excel, they have virtually removed the limit on the number of rows that you can do. Obviously, technically there is some limit, but I don't expect that we will fill up all those rows with the kind of data that we will be working with. So from our perspective, we can, for all practical purpose, we can consider it to be unlimited number of rows, right? As I said, row is a collection of cells which are next to each other. Okay. So the second thing is that we also have columns, right? So we have column A, column B, column C, column D, and so on, right? So this is A, B, C, D, E, and so on. So, and once again, there is really no limit to the number of columns that you can have in a spreadsheet. So you may be wondering what happens after Z. So yeah, which means 26 is not really the limit. After Z, they go to AA, AB, AC, AD, and so on. So effectively, that is where you have 26 times 26 as the number of columns. And beyond that, even you are not satisfied with 26 multiplied by 26, you can get 26 multiplied by 26 multiplied by 26, and you can keep going. Okay. So that is the first part of the data model. So what is the data model? Data is organized in the form of cells. Multiple cells adjacent to each other combine, and they are called as a row. And multiple cells, one below each other in the same column, they are called as columns, and they are labeled with A, B, C, D, right? So columns are labeled as A with the letters of the alphabet, and the rows are labeled using numbers. Okay, that is the first part of organizing the data. So what we should do is we should always make it a point to label the column with your own from your own perspective, because these default labels of the columns called A, B, C, D cannot be changed. Right? There is no way for you to change that. So obviously our data, you want to give much more meaningful labels to our data. So you should always give label, the first row. The first row should always contain labels to the columns of the data that you are going to manage, right? Or you are going to work with. So for example, so you can have the roll number of the student, you can have the name of the student, and so on, right? So the width of the cell columns can be increased and organized, okay? And whatever, right? So you say course that they are studying and so on, so you can have as many columns as possible. Okay, so at this point in time, I also want to point out that, from a structured organization of the data, the spreadsheet also includes lots of formatting capabilities. Okay, so what are the formatting capabilities that Excel has, right? So for example, I can make this into bold. You can see that your familiar Microsoft Word icons are all there on the top. Okay, so if I want so this particular column to appear in a different color, so I can do that. I can again make it into bold. The same hotkeys that you use in Word will work. So Control B is bold and so on. Okay, so you can even color these cells, right? So I'm going to color this cell as green. Okay. But having said this, structured organization of the data does not require you to do any fancy formatting. That is not where the core strength of the spreadsheet program is. Okay? So if you are indeed interested in fancy, preparing nice reports, good looking reports, at that time you are better off copying the data from your spreadsheet and then pasting it into something more powerful with better formatting options like Microsoft Word, and then you do all the formatting in the Microsoft Word. So this is something specific that I want to tell, because Microsoft Excel is not going to prevent you from doing all this fancy stuff. But I do want to point out that it has got limited formatting facilities compared to Word. Okay, and there are also many other reasons why you shouldn't, even if some of the other formatting facilities that are there, you should not be using if it is there in Microsoft Excel, because it will limit the capabilities of the software. For example, what is it that I do not know you should avoid doing? For example, it is not really compulsory that the data should be there in the first row, right? So the heading should be there in the first row. For whatever it is worth, you may just say, okay, from a visual point of view, it is good to leave some space on the top, so let me give some gap. You should not be doing this in a spreadsheet program. If that is indeed important, the way it appears, that you want gaps in the top, you want something else on the top, you should use Microsoft Word, right? So you should use the data which is there in this form, right? So let me put some sample row numbers. So I'm going to put some row number, some name, and you say database, right? And I'll put one more row number here. Okay, other name. Okay, and say operating system, right? So now when you have this, okay, so when you have this, you should not be tempted to play around with the formatting here, right? So for example, you may be tempted, okay, let me give some lots of space on the top, and then I want to put some heading here. You say that BTech, CSE, say second semester mark sheet, right? So if this, you may be tempted, right? So now you can also, you would say that, no, I want it to be centered. So there are features which will allow you to do that. So I can merge and center, I can put it in bold and all of that. I want to reiterate that this is not a structured way of organizing data in a spreadsheet. I agree, Excel allows you to do that, but this organizing data in this one will limit many of the things which I said we will do later, right? So we said we'll do calculations later on. We said I will show you slice and dice, right? I will show you charting. Many of those operations become extremely difficult if you have lots of formatting done to your data. Okay, so if you do have to, I can understand that you are expected to give good looking reports as part of your reporting, but use, right? So organize the data in a structured way in a spreadsheet, copy paste them into Microsoft Word, and then you do all the formatting there, because we will not be doing the other operations in Microsoft Word, whatever we talked about, the slice and dice and those kind of things, that we will continue to do only in the spreadsheet program. So that is one key takeaway in terms of how to organize data in a structured way. So I'm going to undo all of these things by pressing Ctrl Z. So I'm going to undo. So we are back on the top. Okay, so this is one thing. In fact, I don't even need the colors and so on. So we can remove that, right? So this is the first lesson in structured organizing of data. Now, when it comes back, when we go back to the data model of spreadsheet, of Excel in particular, we said data is organized in the form of cells, and consecutive cells appearing next to each other are grouped to form rows, and cells which appear one below the other are grouped to form columns. Okay. Now, there is also an additional feature available to organize your data, which is in the form of a sheet. So this whole file, you don't really call it as a file, you call it as a workbook. Okay. So this workbook is what we are seeing. If you see in the bottom, you will see this is labeled as sheet 1. What it means is that a single workbook can contain multiple sheets. Okay. So I can click on the plus symbol at the bottom. Okay. And I can say this becomes my second sheet. If I click on sheet 1, I'll get back to the first sheet. I can go to the second sheet and put some other data, right? So you say that, so suppose this is say second semester students, right? So this is second semester data, and then you can double click on it and call it as third semester data, right? And so on. So you are free to organize, create as many sheets as you want in a single workbook. The whole thing is called as a workbook. Within the workbook, you can have many different spreadsheets, which also means, right, an incorrect way of organizing data is to include everything in the single spreadsheet, worksheet itself, right? So, for example, I have seen people wherein they will say first 3 columns will be corresponding to second semester, then they will leave a gap here and then put the same set of attributes and put it here and for the third semester. Okay, this is not a good idea at all from a structured handling of data, right? So yes, I can understand that this particular representation of your data will allow you to create reports wherein the second semester data and the third semester data can be printed next to each other and so on. Okay, so you are better off doing the same thing in Microsoft Word. I will repeat, I am not saying this cannot be done technically in Excel. It can be done in Excel. There are very sophisticated ways of doing it, but if you concentrate on using one software product for only one purpose, then it makes your life extremely easy, because when you try to use a single piece of software for multiple purpose, then you may end up modifying the data representation to suit that purpose, which again messes up, it results in a lot of rework for you. Okay, so which means that here also I'm going to press Ctrl Z. if indeed you want to organize a different set of data, you please choose a different sheet, right? Add new sheets. I also want to point out that while you can have as many number of sheets as possible as you want, they all can have different sets of column headings. They need not be the same, right? So for example, in the first sheet we have named it as second semester. Suppose in the next sheet I just want to have a course list. Okay, so what I will do, I will put the column heading as serial number, and I will say course code and course name. Okay, so I'm going to make the column a little wider, right? So I can say serial number 1, course code CS101, and then I'll say programming in C. Okay, so I can say 2 CS301 database systems. Okay, so this is, now you can see that the heading for this one contains 3 columns called serial number, course code and course name, whereas this one also has got 3 columns, but well, of course I can have any number of columns which has got roll number, name and course. Okay, so this is these are the options that are available for you to organize your data in a very structured way, and I would strongly encourage you to follow or practice the best practices that I have just talked about and avoid some of the incorrect ways of structured organization of the data, right? Unfortunately, right, so spreadsheet Excel is an extremely powerful tool, so it will allow different people to use it in different ways, but for as educators, I know that this is possibly the best way of organizing the data that you have. Let us try to understand the second aspect of data handling, which is enabled through the use of spreadsheet programs, which is performing calculations, right? So let us go back to this spreadsheet that we started in the previous video, right? We said, I hope you remember the key elements of structured handling of the data. So if you remember, one of the aspects of structured handling of the data is that the first row should contain the column headings. Now suppose this is the data that I have, and I want to I want to track the marks obtained by my students in various assessments, right? So for example, right, so I'm having exam, I conducted one exam, so I'll put that as exam 1, and then I'll say I conducted assignment 1, and then I conducted another exam 2, and I gave, say, a project. Okay, so that way each assessment component will become a column in my spreadsheet. Okay, and within this components, I can say enter the marks. So I can say that suppose typically what I will also generally do is within the parentheses I will write down for how many marks is that exam, so we can still use it. This has got nothing to do with it. This is just for our own human reference. We will not be using this information anywhere. So there is an assignment 1 which is for 10 marks. Let me expand that. Exam 2 is possibly for another 25 marks. Okay. And project is probably, right, so 50 marks. Okay. Let us just see 50, 75, 100. So let me make this into, say, make it 25. Right, so 25 there is 85, so let's make it so that it all adds up to 100. Right, so 75. Let us make this assignment 1 also for 25 marks. Okay, so now what will happen? So you would have you will conduct your assessments, and the grading is finished. So you can start entering the data in your spreadsheet, right? So you'll say somebody right? So roll number 20393 got 21. So this student got 24. Okay. So what you do is you can create your template, you can organize all the headings and keep entering the data as and when those activities get completed, right? So maybe assignment is something that they all got full marks. Okay, there is again another exam. So wherein it is 18 marks and they say 22 marks, right? So this is one, and then the project, right? So probably they did the project very well, and 23. So this is how firstly you will start gathering the data, right? So when you're talking about data handling, it is about gathering the data and entering the data and so on, right? Now let us see how do you do some calculation. So I want to say what is the total marks obtained out of 100. Okay. So when I want to do this, there are a couple of ways of doing this, which is firstly, I want to introduce you to the concept of a formula. Okay. Formula in Excel is entered, is created by going into the cell, pressing an equal to sign, and then writing the formula, right? Now in our case, the formula is essentially the adding up of these elements, which is 21, 25, 18 and 24 for the first student. In order to be comfortable with writing formulas, one essential aspect that you have to know is something called as a cell reference, right? It is, you can, those who are, we all do mathematics. In mathematics, we have variables, isn't it? So cell reference is nothing but a variable. So when we write the formula, just like in equations and so on, wherein we write the formula with equations, with variables, and then when you want to calculate the value of the formula, you substitute the variable with the actual value. Here also the same principle is followed for creating the formula. So instead of variable, we call it as a cell reference here. Now, how do you create variables in the form of cell reference in Excel or any spreadsheet for that matter, right? So let us take this 21. Okay, this 21, the cell reference is nothing but the intersection of the column and the row. So what is the column for the cell number 21, where the value is 21? The column is C. What is the row reference? The row reference you will get is the row which is there corresponding to that particular cell, which is 2. So the full cell reference for this value of 21 is called as is C1. Okay, please remember the column name comes first and then the row number comes later. Okay, normally we say row column, but actually the cell reference is in the form of column followed by the row. Okay, so you can in a formula you can simply get the value of any cell reference by using the equal to symbol, right? For example, in this total column, if I put equal to and then say C1 and press enter, you can see, okay, it is showing C1. It turns out that C1 happens to be this first row, but the value we are interested in is not C1 but C2. So how do we go and change? You click on the cell, you go to the top, that is where the formula bar, that is called as the formula bar. So I'm going to go by there and change it to C2. Okay, now you can see that this C2 that you see here, where 21 is same as this 21. Okay, the beauty of formulae and cell references, of using cell references, is that if you change the value, right, if this 21 somebody came, you conducted the exam, you gave back the exam answer books, and then the students, like they always do, they negotiated that, this answer is correct, can you give me some more partial marks? So you are a kind-hearted teacher, so you end up giving, say 21, you change it to 22. Now I change that to 22 and then I press enter. You can see that this value here automatically got changed to 22. This is a very important feature because I have seen people who use formulae without using variables. They almost use it like a calculator, right? The last thing that you want to do is, you don't, without using cell reference, you can simply use equal to and then manually say 22 plus 25, right, plus 18, right, plus 24, right, and then press enter. Sure enough, it has calculated, but this way of writing the formula, you are not using Excel any more than what your calculator, desk calculator, right? But then that is, while it is giving the correct answer, this is not the way to use formulae in Excel. There are many reasons why it is not a good idea. For one thing, if I decide to change the value from 22 to 24, right, you will notice that, please pay attention to this 90, that 90 will remain 90. So the students are going to come back to you saying that, no sir or ma'am, the total is still not updated although you gave me 2 extra marks, right? So if I go back and change it to the cell reference, so I'm going to say is equal to C2 plus D2 plus E2 plus F2, okay, and press enter. It has become 91. So you decide to reduce the marks, okay, the total also comes down. So this is something that you can practice. So the key here is to understand what is a cell reference, okay. Now there is one more very good reason why you should use cell references in your formulae and not hard code the actual numbers, right? So obviously your class will have many students. It may have 30 students, 60 students, right? In some cases hundreds of students. So it is impractical to go to each total row and then type, say, equal to, now it has become, now the cell reference that I should use is C3 plus D3 plus E3 plus F3. So it is impractical to keep typing for 1000 rows, right? So that is where, if you use cell references, it will allow you to do Control C, which is copy, and paste, Control V. You can clearly see that this specific Control C, Control V actually did not copy the value of 87. What it copied is the formula that was used for calculating the 87, right? Now, it has also done something very interesting. If you can please pay attention to the top, okay. So here you can see that C2 plus D2 plus E2 plus F2, okay. Please remember that. I'm going to click on the 94 and focus on the cell formula for this one. It has magically become C3 plus D3 plus E3 plus F3. Did you see me change the C2 to C3? No, I didn't do anything, right? So that is indeed like magic. That is what Excel does for you, right? So if you have any number of students, you write the formula using these relative references. What it will do is, you have to stick to the same column. Internally what it is doing is, it is within this formula, within this particular formula of C2, D2, E2, since I am sticking to the same column, right, I am copy pasting from G2 to G3. So the column has not changed. So it retains the existing column references of C, D, E and F, but then the row has changed. I have copy pasting from the second row into the third row. So what it will do is, it will take the row whose reference where I am pasting, and it will replace the 2 or 3 with that particular value. Okay, so that is exactly what it is going to do. It is going to move ahead by that many rows. Okay, so let us just add one more student. Okay, some random email number, roll number, new name, Okay, exam 1, 21, 20, this is again 24, right? Maybe he didn't do very well in the exam, right? And then I did exceedingly well in the project, right? So now you can see that now I need to compute the total. So I can do Control C, I can do Control V. Okay. So this is one aspect of using formulae. Now this formulae can do lots of many other powerful things. So I will illustrate one specific aspect of formulae using built-in functions. Okay. So there is nothing wrong with the way we have written this particular formula as C2 plus D2 plus E2 plus F2. We saw that cells can be, you can have cell references. You can also have reference to range of cells, right? So wouldn't it be nice to specify this formula as being sum of the values from C2 to F2, right? C2 to F2, right? So that is another way of saying, because tomorrow you may introduce some other components here, the formula will remain the same because it's a range that you have said. You said that from C to whatever, right? G or F in this case. So I'm going to rewrite the formula. I'm going to remove the existing formula. I'm going to type equal to sum parenthesis. Okay. I will say the cell range is C2 colon F2. You get exactly the same value. Okay. So how do you know this is a range and not a specific cell? Because we have put a colon symbol in between. We have put a colon symbol in between to specify that this is indeed a range which is starting at C and going all the way to F. Okay. Now, creating cell ranges can be a bit tricky. Okay. So what I will show you one more way of creating cell ranges. So once you press equal to, you are entering the formula mode. So you type the name of the function that you want to utilize. Now I want to generate that cell range without typing. The way to do that is, while you are still in the formula mode, you can click without releasing it, you can drag. As you can see, the cell range is getting formed automatically for you as C3 colon F3. So once you have covered the necessary cells that you are interested in, you can leave the mouse, press the close bracket and press enter. Okay. So these are the two ways in which you can create the sum, use functions, and in this particular case we are using sum, but then you have it doesn't matter. Once you have created, now I can still do Control C and Control V and the formula gets copied. Okay. I will urge you to explore so many other functions that are there, right? So you click on FX and then you go to a blank cell and click inside and then click on FX. It will show you what are the different categories of functions that are there. So you have the mathematical categories, right? So you have financial functions, you have date and time functions, mathematical and trigonometry functions, statistical functions like average, median, right? All those things are there. So you can see these are the statistical correlation, coefficients and so on. I'll talk about lookup and reference next. Right? So many are there, engineering functions and so on, right? So that is something that you can explore on your own. Okay. So this is the basic about, I wanted to tell you that it is possible to do calculations. That is the primary objective. Now you know that you can look for specific videos on how to write powerful formulae and correct formulae. As I said, within the scope of the time available, this is not really a tutorial on Excel, which we You can actually, there are plenty of very nice tutorials that are out there, but please keep those aspects that I talked about in mind about, how to organize the data in a structured way, what are rows, what are columns, what are sheets, right? So that is more crucial. Once you organize the data in a way, the specific skills to write these formulas and powerful formulae, all that will come very naturally to you. I'm going to shift to something very exciting and extremely powerful set of operations that you can do with spreadsheet programs, which is essentially analyzing your data, right? So slice and dice is a little bit of a colloquial term, which actually means that your ability to analyze the data, okay? So for that, I'm going to use a different spreadsheet program, which is coming from my own course, okay? So this is a course that I teach for my students, okay? So this is how I organize my data, and obviously I have hidden the information about my students' roll number, their name, their email address. You can see that the column headings A is followed by column E, which means that there are a few columns that I have hidden, right? Obviously for privacy reasons and so on. Okay. Now let us quickly recap the best practices about organizing the data. What did I say? You should organize the data using multiple columns, and the first row should contain the column heading, right? And overall you can have many sheets. As you can see, this sheet is named overall, and I have a sheet for my midterm exam, I have a sheet for my in-term exam, and I have individual sheets for my assessments that I have done, and so on. Okay. Now, what do we mean by analyzing? Okay. So analyzing is, there are different ways you may want to look at your data. Okay. For example, the first way of looking at your data, the operation that I want to introduce is called filtering. Filtering of the data. Okay. So filtering, how do you do filtering of the data from an analysis point of view? Okay. So firstly, we will select all the columns which we are interested in analyzing. Okay. And then I will go to the data column and then click on filter. Okay. So the moment I click on filter, you will notice that a little drop down appears. A little drop down appears in all the columns. Okay. Depending upon the type of the column, you can apply different kinds of filters. Okay. So let us see this. The first kind of a filter that I want to apply is number filter, right? Because these are all numerical values, I can apply number filters. When I click on the drop down, what it shows is that all the values in that filter are selected, which means nothing is excluded. Okay. Now suppose you are interested in only those students who received less than the pass mark, which happens to be say 35. Now firstly what we should do is we should unselect everything by clicking on that, and then select only those rows that are of importance. Suppose my pass mark is 50 instead of 35. You can manually click, you can visually see that there is a 21.05, there is a 40.64, there is a 43.3, 48.92, and so on, right? So these are the ones that you will click, and you will click OK. Now you can see that the number of rows in my spreadsheet has come down. Okay. But of course, there is no need to panic. Your data is still safe. It is not, filtering does not delete the data, right? So you can see that the filter is active. So how do you know whether the filter is active or not? How do you know whether you accidentally deleted the data or you are actually doing a filter? One hint that Excel gives you is when you look at the row numbers, it will appear in blue color. when it appears in blue color, what it shows is that a filter is active. So very clearly it shows that these are the 4 rows that are satisfying our filter condition. Row number 51, 52, 53, 54 and 55. Okay. So this is one way. Immediately you can look at the names of the students. You can take whatever action that you want and do that. Okay. So you can release the filters, which means you can see all the data one more time by clicking on clear inside the data, right? So inside the data there is a clear one. If the filter is already active, this filter button will show depressed, right? It will be pressed and you can clear it and all your data comes back. Okay. So this is one way of applying filter on numerical columns. Okay. Another way is to apply filters on non-numerical columns. Okay. Okay. On the filter columns, I will tell you one more way of applying numerical filters. So you can apply what are known as number filters. So you can apply filters wherein you want looking for a specific equal to value, does not equal, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. So this 50 mark boundary, if you want, we could have done the same thing using greater than or equal to 50, right? I'll say okay. Oh, this is greater than or equal to 50. We are interested in people who have not scored that much, right? So we will say less than or equal to 50. Okay. So the same 4 students will appear one more time. So you can do number filters, then it gives you lots and lots of operations like less than, greater than, or alternatively you can manually choose the values that are of interest to you. I'm going to clear the filter again. If you have non-numeric data, which is like these letter grades, for example, right? I can click on the drop down and once again look at these grades that are of interest to you. So I want to see, I'll deselect all. I want to see only those students who received say C grade. So this is how it will show that these are the 4 students who have received the C grade. You also have the option to look at more than one grade, right? So you can say C grade, C plus grade and D grade. Who are the students who got it? Okay, you will see that these are the students who got that. You can also combine filters. Okay, now let us change the filter. Suppose I want to pick up people who are having A and A minus. Okay. So when I pick up people having A and A minus, I can apply secondary filter on top of it just to say among those who have A and A minus, show me only those who have marks greater than, total marks greater than or equal to 90. So you please note here that this particular value, now you can also see that in the bottom left, it says 14 of 54. So whenever a filter is active, it will tell you how many rows have been filtered. So you can now that there are 14 rows, but I am not interested in all those 14. I am interested in only those who have A or A minus grade, and I want their total marks to be greater than or equal to 90. Right? So I want only the 90% people. And visually you can see for now that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 students are there. Let's say we will get those 8 students. Indeed, when you look at the bottom left, it says 8 of 54. So we have got all the 8 students. So you can filter based on a single column, you can filter based on multiple column, right? Just from a data warehousing and data analytics terminology, when you filter on the single column, it is called a slice. If you filter on more than one column, it is called as the dice operation. Okay, so I'm going to clear the filter one more time. So this is also very powerful operation. Let us talk about the last feature of Excel, which is extremely useful for educators, which is the ability to draw charts and graphs from your data. Okay. Remember, I was showing you the distribution of grades. The grade sheet is what I showed you in the previous video. So that data is here. This is the data that we looked at. So as I said, your workbook can have multiple sheets. So what I will do is I go in my stats. I have created a sheet called stats, wherein I have computed how many people have got A grade, A minus, B plus, B minus, and so on. Now I am interested in creating a chart out of this. Okay. So if I am interested in creating a chart, it's very easy. So you select the data where you want to do the chart, and then when you go to the home tab, right? So you will have many menu on top of it. So the charting feature, the charting buttons can be there as part of your insert menu, right? Because you want to insert a new chart, so you can click on that. And the charting section is there in this panel, right? So you can see that it is labeled as charts below. Okay. So these charts, now there are many charts that are there, the bar chart and the area chart, right? So many pie charts, so many charts are there. So I'll click on recommended charts and then say what are the recommendations it is doing. The first recommendation it is giving me is the bar chart. I will accept that and say OK. So there you go. So with just a single click, your chart is ready, right? Now this is something your Microsoft Word cannot do, right? If you remember in the first video I said on data handling, I said, yes, right? So Word is not a data handling software, right? It is more of a formatting and documentation software. So if you have to prepare a report, prepare it using the spreadsheet program. Now you can simply select this, Control C, and paste it into your spreadsheet program. Okay. Now you can also do you can change the colors. There's so many options that are there which you can play around with, right? So it can display the values, it can as part of the labels, right? So you can do all of that. And even if you are interested in changing the chart, say to a pie chart, you can do that too, right? So this is a pie chart. So you go to the chart tools on the top, and then you can change the representation to different styles, right? So you can also see what percentage is it and so on. Okay. So this is somehow I don't prefer pie charts. So I will go back to my bar chart and display my data like this, right? So this is very useful to look at it and to present your results. In fact, I will also say that this spreadsheets need not necessarily be useful for your marks and grades and so on, right? For example, you might be doing some research, right? So you might be doing some research. So that research data could be gathered in the form of a spreadsheet, and then you can do lots of slice, dice, and analysis on top of it, including drawing different kinds of charts. Okay. So many of these features are way too extensive for me to cover in a short video, but and the tool itself is extremely intuitive. You don't really need anybody to come and teach how to use these tools, because if you just hover the mouse pointer on many of these menu items, they show you a documentation of what it will do. Even there, if you are not convinced, then take the name of the menu item and go put it in the search engine, and then you will get videos on it, you will get documentations on it, and so on. Okay, but the core here is that you should use it, right? You should definitely use it and utilize to represent the data, manage the data, and analyze the data as well. Let us wrap up this module on data handling by getting a recap of the key takeaways from this particular module. Firstly, you should use spreadsheet software to manage data, always, right? For all the good reasons that we saw in this particular module, right? In particular, I would like to remind, never manage data using a word processing software, right? So like Microsoft Word and things like that, because you cannot do anything very fancy with that. You cannot write formulae, you cannot create charts. It has got very limited capabilities. The second important takeaway is that organize the data in a structured manner using all the modeling elements that are available, such as cells, rows, right, columns, and sheets, right? Remember, we said in a single workbook there can be many sheets as well. Okay, so which means that never use the spreadsheet software for formatting the data specifically for the purpose of printing reports and things like that, right? So because the moment you do that, many of the features, including the filtering feature that we saw, becomes unusable. Okay, so that is something that that will make the data very less usable for you. And of course, I'm not denying the fact that you may have to prepare good looking reports. So by all means, it is very easy for you to copy paste from, say, Microsoft Excel to Microsoft Word. Now the whole formatting gets, it can be done as part of the Microsoft Word, including column headings, colors that you want to do, and so on. You can even create charts there and then copy paste them into Word and so on. So it is extremely powerful. So please use it that way, and because keeping it well organized is extremely important. And then formulae, right? So perform calculations using formulae, right? Even when you are writing the formulae, as I said, you can indeed use it like a calculator. I will say dumb calculator, because you cannot do variables and things like that unless it's a very sophisticated calculator. But Excel is a lot more powerful than a calculator can ever be. Okay, so that is why you should learn how to do calculations using the spreadsheet programs. The formula structure is pretty much same irrespective of whatever software you are using. If you are using Microsoft Excel, which is installed, Excel on the cloud, Google Sheets, right, or LibreOffice, whatever you use, the formula structure that we saw is the same, including the concepts of cell references and so on. Okay, and finally, use charting features for powerful visual representation of the data, right? Because when you are trying to analyze the data, you would like to summarize the data and look at it in your in the form of pictures. Sometimes even without doing the pictures, you can do, as we saw, powerful analysis using slice and dice and so on. There are plenty of other nice features which is called as pivot tables, right? So this is something you can explore on your own, which will help you summarize the data, right? So when we did the filtering was only to reduce the number of rows or increase the number of rows based on certain criteria. But if you want to aggregate the data and look at the average across different cohorts within your class, then you should be familiar with the pivot table reports as well. Okay, but in general there is plenty to explore in this spreadsheet program. So my objective is to introduce you to this fascinating world and of data handling using spreadsheets. Happy data handling.